Welcome to this short demo of ShareChecker. ShareChecker is a service designed for professionals who are engaged in probate in order to help them to write to the three main registrars in the UK to inquire about shareholdings that may be relevant to the estate of a deceased person. In order to get started, we will enter first the name of the beneficiary, i.e. your client. So let's say that's John Smith. You can put in a reference that's helpful for your system. That might be a case management reference. Accept the terms and you can then carry on. The next thing we need to do then is provide the name of the deceased. So in this case it's Jane Smith and she passed away on Monday the 10th. We can add additional previous names, as many as you like. In this case we're just going to add one extra name, so Jane Jones. And you can keep adding names as many as you like. So in this case 1 to 3. We can add additional addresses. And we can keep adding as many addresses as we like. The next thing we're going to ask you for is any shareholdings that you are aware of that the deceased might have had. So in this case we're going to say we know they had some shares in BP. You may or may not have a shareholder reference. If you do, then please enter it. It will help the registrar to find the person and find their shareholding, but if not, you can leave it blank. And then we do ask you for an estimated value of the shares. This is really important, even if you only have a guesstimate. The reason is that depending on the value of the shares, different processes and different documents are required with the registrars. So in this case, we believe the shareholdings to be worth at least £25,000. So that's what we're going to put in. We can add additional shareholdings, but for this one, we're just going to leave it with the BP shares. We're then going to ask whether the shareholder has a will or not, because again, that changes the process and the documents you need to provide. And then if you are able to tell the registrars how you would potentially like to dispose of the shares, it would be helpful to tell them at this point so they can send you the right paperwork. As you can see, we have determined that based on the information you gave, that you will likely need what's called the letters of administration process, which means you need to include one of these two documents, and if you have it, the share certificate. It's okay if you don't, but if you do have it, you can include it. And then you can print the letter. What that will then do is generate 3 letters, one for each of the registrars. This one is for Link, and then it has all of the information in it that you have entered, as well as there's one for Computershare as well, and so on. So you print this letter out and send it to each of the registrars. Given the information you are enclosing and the documents you are enclosing, it is highly likely that you will be able to do this in one round trip rather than writing a letter and then having to get more documents back that you then have to write back and so on. We can then try and do another search just to show what another example could look like. In this case, we're going to say multiple smaller shareholdings to see what that process looks like. So we think that we think about £1,000 worth of shares in Texaco, and we think they had about say £500 worth of shares in Shell. Again, we can keep adding shareholdings. In this case, we have determined that because of the lower value of the shares, we can probably use what's called a small estate process. However, we do check whether you are applying for probate, because if you do, you always have to go through the other process anyway. So in this case, we're saying we're not going to apply for probate. We don't know how we're going to dispose of the shares. And that has then determined that we can use the small estate process. And that means you need some different documentation, specifically one of these proof of death. Again, if you have the share certificate, but you will also need to fill in what's called a small estate form, one for each of the 3 registrars. They are different for each registrar. And then as before, you can then print the letter, send it out to each of the registrars along with the accompanying documentation. And again, it's highly likely that you will be able to conclude the process in one transaction rather than multiple times of writing back and forth. Thank you very much for watching.